Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Educator Experience podcast. My name is Salli Carter, and today we're joined by Kevin Sanders. He's a higher ed leadership consultant, coach, and a founder of Cornerstone Leadership Group. He helps colleges and universities build stronger leaders, healthier teams, and systems that actually support institutional strategy. He draws on more than 2 decades of experience as a faculty member and senior academic leader. He works with provosts, deans, and department chairs from across North America through coaching, consulting, and leadership development. He's also the author of the Academic Leaders Playbook, as well a nationally recognized speaker and a former Juilliard-trained musician whose experience performing around the world continues to shape his approach to leadership, collaboration, and institutional change. And you'll have to listen to the show to find out what instrument Kevin plays. Now, in this episode, we talk about what it really takes to develop and nurture a strong team because great teams don't happen by accident, do they? We also explore the major shifts that faculty experience when moving into leadership roles like dean, including the transition from individual contributor to institutional leader, navigating people management, building trust, and leading through complexity and change. So without further ado, let's get to it with Kevin Sanders.
Being an educator is one heck of a lonely journey, but every step holds a story, an experience that shapes how we teach, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Educator Experience. I'm your host, Salli Carter, and together we'll explore the moments that define us as educators. Through authentic conversations and shared experiences, we're building a community that connects, reflects, and inspires, all while breaking down barriers in education, one story at a time. You are not alone. Let's grow together.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining us on the Educator Experience podcast here. I have been following you. I've signed up for your newsletter, and I've been really enjoying the leadership coaching and advice that you've been giving. And in your most recent one, you give a quote from Casey Stengel saying, "Getting good players is easy, but getting them to play together is the hard part." So playing in the sandbox. What do you mean by that? What does that mean to you?
Well, it was a really great quote, kind of reinforcing the point I was making in the newsletter. You know, we see this in higher ed all the time. Units and departments are made up of just really high achieving, accomplished faculty members and staff members. But especially on the faculty side, it's rare that we have conversations about how we're going to work together. What are our shared goals for the department? And sure, people are assigned to committees and they're told to do A, B, and C, but like real conversations about what does success look like for this department? How do we know we're going to be successful? What do we value as a group? And so I think most people don't ever have these conversations. Most departments don't have these conversations. And so it's left to a lot of either A, assumptions, or B, kind of approaching the collective work with different language. And it can create unnecessarily, it can create friction in the work that we have to do every day.
You're so true with high achieving individuals and how do we bring them together? Your experience in higher ed, you've seen this, I guess, right? Have you seen a really productive team? What qualities do they have and how do they get there?
Absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of examples of those too. I've never seen a really great team on accident. It's kind of like a
I like
marriage.
that.
It's because the team works at it. They've had
Kevin,
these
I'm
kinds
not
of
married because
conversations.
I don't want to work at these things. Maybe
Hey,
that's the reason.
you know what? I could expand that definition and I could say, any relationship you have with
Yeah,
another human
yeah,
being, like there takes a little bit of work, right?
100%.
And this is kind of central to a lot of the work I do with leaders, because when faculty get promoted into a chair or a dean or a whatever leadership role, the qualities it takes to be an excellent faculty member are very, very different than they are the qualities to
Yes.
be a leader. You excel at being a faculty member by the solitary work a lot of the times, by the individual achievements that you accomplish. And then you get into these leadership roles and nobody wants to hear you talk about your research anymore. They want to hear you talk about someone else's research or the collective accomplishments of the department. And it's a complete paradigm shift. And so we talk a lot about, what sort of skills we need to make that shift into leadership. But when I see really good teams working together, it's groups of people who are on the same page about these questions that I mentioned earlier about, where are we headed? How are we going to get there? What are our priorities? And just being really transparent with those uh those conversations we should be having.
When you talk about certain skills, what do you mean by that, or what are you looking for?
A great example, let's talk about conflict management. So, when you're a faculty member and you have a conflict with another faculty member, you're dealing with a peer. When you're in a leadership position, a lot of the times it's going to be your job to mediate that conflict, to find a middle ground or a compromise. And that's not always necessary when you're a faculty member. Conflict management is just one example, but I mean, thinking about change management. As a faculty member, you're thinking about your research portfolio and your work, or your classes, and all of a sudden, as a leader, you're in the 10,000-foot view, and you're having to think about the unit's strategic plan, or how to take collective skill sets of many people and pair them together to move things forward. So it's just a different way of thinking about things, and it's less of me, more of us, and that's a big change.
It is, isn't it? Because also, when you're a faculty member and you're going for tenure, you're going for promotion, it is very boastful. Like, you
hmm
are required to show and demonstrate your regular accomplishments, and then it's such a shift. That makes sense to me.
Well, and you bring up a good point. The tenure and promotion process almost, I had never really thought about this before, but it almost instills those qualities in faculty member. You have to get
Yeah,
comfortable at talking about yourself and thinking about
and your achievement.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I have worked a lot as a sessional and part-time person for a plethora of organizations. I'm on faculty with a college and contract work with a university. And I've just started to, after 10 years in higher ed, started to understand the tenure and promotion process, and was part of some workshops a couple of weeks ago. So I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And then some workshops that I led there, faculty were having difficulty getting comfortable with, is the word boasting about themselves? I don't know why I'm stuck on that word, but really sharing their accomplishments on blast, kind of thing, in order to get to that next step in promotion.
I mean, 100%. I mean, that's one of the things that you learn in the academy. If you don't learn to share what your achievements are, there's oftentimes not very many cheerleaders around. I'll tell you, one of the kind of things I attribute to my music background, I don't know if you know, but I was a tuba player for a long time. So tuba players sit on the back row. They are never asked to be in front of the ensemble. It's an instrument that supports all of the other instruments. I've never really been that comfortable talking about myself or even my achievements. And so it's actually much more comfortable for me to talk about other people's accomplishments. And I think I instill some of that from my music background.
That is so cool. How long have you been playing music for? Since you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, since I was 5 years old.
Oh my gosh. I literally just pulled my guitar out of the trunk of my car to bring into my house, and it's been in there. I don't even wanna, this is so embarrassing, for about 6 months, and I need space in my trunk right now. I bought a guitar. I was so, like, h hell-bent on learning this instrument, not realizing how incredibly hard it would be. I am so amazed by musicians and how, yeah, it's, you make it look so easy, and whenever I
No,
try something, it's a total disaster, but try time and patience, I'm sure.
I would love to know how to play guitar,
Yeah.
because you can take that out at a party. You can't take a tuba out at a party. Nobody wants to hear that. So
People are like, "What's your party trick, Kevin?" And
right,
you bring out this
right.
massive thing.
I've done it before, and it goes downhill fast. So
Oh my God, that's awesome. So, are you a sports guy? In your newsletter, you mentioned Casey Stengel. And did I pronounce that right? Because I was thinking of you. It says that he's what, the 7-time World Series champion manager or something? Is that
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to be honest. I am not a sports
Okay,
person. That I know his name as a coach, but I know very little about him beyond the fact that he was apparently a very colorful figure. He has a lot of really great quotes attributed to him, and that's kind of where my knowledge stops.
fine. So, Kevin, how did you get into higher ed then to where you are now? What's your story? What's your journey?
So I got to tell you, I had every intention of being a professional full time classical musician. I got all of the classical training, and I spent many years performing with professional ensembles. I got out of college and I wanted to not just work at Chick-fil-A. I had a master's degree and I wanted to see what my opportunities were. And so I moved back home to Arkansas, which is where I mostly grew up. There was a small regional university that needed an adjunct professor. All of my friends were still in New York City doing really cool performances but I really saw it as this is, I'm getting my foot in the door at age 24. This is a really great opportunity. And so after my first year, it became a full-time instructor role. And I think one of the most kind of illuminating points of those early years was one of the things that I figured out was one, I love teaching. I did not know that before because, like a lot of faculty members, I had not been trained to be a teacher. And I realized that the thing I loved about teaching was not what music was the vehicle for it. It wasn't teaching music, it was teaching. It was the act of being able to sit in the passenger side seat with somebody while watching them grow or have a
Wow.
helping hand in their growth. I think that's exactly one of the reasons why I love the leadership development work now because it's the same kind of fulfillment, getting to be
Growth.
next to somebody. Yeah.
It's amazing. So this is a question because I don't get the opportunity to talk to a lot of music teachers. I'm a business person, so most of my colleagues are somewhere around that sphere. And y'all music people, and art people, you're out there. So I'm curious when you have conversed with people outside of music, is the way that you approach teaching similar, do you find, or are your conversations different? Kind of a weird question, but it's just such a different genre.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, this is one of the reasons why university presidents and provosts sometimes don't like arts programs because they're really expensive, and a lot of the teaching is one on one versus one teacher to 30 students. Most of my teaching was in a one on one applied sense. And
Right.
so if you go to any music school, some theater programs, art programs, there's a lot of one-on-one instruction. And so the bond between teacher and student is really, really tight. And it creates these really special relationships where it's not uncommon for faculty members to stay in touch with their students 10, 20 years after they graduate because they spent a lot of time with them during their years on campus.
Yeah, you're not just a teacher, but you are a lifelong mentor. It sounds like totally different relationship. Interesting. I was like, wow, this question is kind of going off base and probably sounds weird. Music is being a music teacher is not different per se. It's just different for me. So I apologize for using the word
No, no,
different.
that
So what stands out from you for your from your career? Is there anything that really has stuck with you in terms of impact?
for teaching.
Teaching or leadership or anything?
Hmm. That first experience where I realized why I love teaching was a major standout point. And then I think when I started moving into administrative roles, the very first administrative role I had, it was an assistant director role, and I was overseeing scholarships. It was about $1 million budget. Did I have any training doing that? No. And that's very typical, right? But it got me a little bit out of the classroom, gave me an opportunity to work more closely with my colleagues across the department. I was interacting a lot more with students. Those first couple of roles in administration, I really, really enjoyed because They allowed me to have more touch points and be able to have a larger impact. I see so much of the role, administrative role, as removing friction from processes and making life easier for the people who have to navigate those things. Those early experiences, I think, were really detrimental to how I shaped, what kind of leader I wanted to be and how I wanted to serve people.
I'm kind of, my brain keeps getting stuck on the conflict management piece because I have some in the spaces that I'm working, there are some challenging individuals or just not team players. What is some advice or techniques that have worked for you in the past? If you have like the outsider of a team or someone who's just not quite gelling.
Well, one of the things that academics, we love to find a formula that is the perfect answer. If you do A, B, and C, it will solve that problem. Or if you say these words in this order, you've checked a box and you've solved this issue. And especially when it comes to conflict management and other people, it's a relationship with another person. And so you can go to it with the best of intentions, and you can play the cards and say the words. It's up to the other person how they're going to respond to those things. And a lot of the times the response is based on how much trust there is between the two individuals. But my experience with this is that the more transparent you can be in those situations, the better. And especially if you can elevate the conversation. Give you a simple example. A faculty member being upset that they can't teach their class at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday,
Mm,
Thursday. And so, for
scheduling issue.
right. Yeah. And so,
Oh,
for
gets
that
everybody going. Yeah.
yeah. And for that person, it's their class. But if you can kind of zoom out and help people understand the bigger picture, and this is something leaders, myself included, struggle with, is just making sure people understand where you're coming from in your thinking and why you're having the conversation, or what your rationale is around your decision. And sometimes that can help in rational situations. I mean, the issue is sometimes we're not dealing with that. Um, Sometimes the issues are closer to control or entitlement. These are things that I think are really hard to unpack in a one-time conversation.
Yeah, and take a lot of work in relationship building. I was just having a conversation a couple weeks ago with the former president of Georgetown College, Bill Crouch, and I got a similar vibe from your newsletters in that it's all about people and relationship building. And he talked about that on our podcast that you really need to spend the time getting to know the people you're working with and showing that you care and that you're there for them. How else are you seeing that done well in the places that you work or that you've had connections with? What else, what other tips can you be sharing with leaders or potential administrators getting into the field?
Well, so I mean, I think a lot of it is it's time, and it just takes a lot of time, right? And when you are either a new leader or new in a role, I'll tell you, 99% of them, myself included, have a laundry list of things that they want to see accomplished, and they're ready. And so slowing down to create those relationships, slowing down to learn more about the other people, but also show them things about you and what you value. Um, and then having some of these conversations that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation about, what do we want to accomplish together? These are all, I mean, just foundational things to do. And it's easier said than done, and this is one of the things that I think is sort of central to a lot of the work that I do with other leaders and on other campuses, is that we are tasking our leaders to execute strategy and to new initiatives. We're often not investing time and equipping them with the kind of the people skills to
Yeah.
navigate all of these things. I was talking to somebody earlier this week. A perfect example of this conversation is AI. Well, almost every provost in the country is having a conversation about how to implement AI on their campus. And I think a lot of them want to figure out how to do that. As that conversation filters down um, to the faculty, it's being left to deans and department chairs to have these conversations and to navigate these conversations around people's comfort around the ethics of AI or around yeah, just the logistics of how to implement it in their class or in their specific discipline. And that's a lot more complicated than just agreeing, yeah, we need AI on
Mhm.
our campus. And you probably know it's an emotional topic for some people.
It is. Yeah.
And and so, just being equipped to know how to handle that. And so few faculty who move into leadership roles are equipped to really know how to handle that.
It's really interesting that you bring that up. I've had so many conversations about AI and teaching and learning. That's actually my specialty. And I work with the university kind of leading that initiative. People are all over the map. Faculty are all over the map. Some super hesitant, refusal, some gung ho have already implemented a lot of cool things. What a challenging time, not just for faculty and administrators leading that, but for students as well,
Mhm.
because it is the wild, wild west right now.
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
right.
nobody knows what they're doing. The universities in Canada, at least that I'm aware of, are hesitant to introduce any specific policies around it because that would restrict or
Mm.
confine potential future decisions. So it is literally up to the deans and the administrators of those specific departments. And then that's yet another thing put on their backs that they may not have been ready for. And something that you said really resonated with me that it takes time. I've seen leaders come into positions that are like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this is our timeline, and we're going to get to it. And in my experience, I've seen those specific type of leaders fail because they don't take the time. They think they have this immediate agenda, and they probably there's a lot being put on them, but it only works if you take the time to get to know your faculty, your staff, the people around you, build those relationships and that trust, as you were talking about, in order to slowly implement things. And I can't even imagine the pressure that is on admin for everything that they have to do, but they can't get to it unless they take that time to build the trust.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could not agree more.
Mhm. Yeah, I've seen people bomb, and I'm like, "Oh," they just come in with an agenda, and I just going back to Bill Crouch, and it's funny because he's the last podcast I recorded with, and it was so inspirational, but he said he was president for 22 years because and I'm like, "That's a long time," but he said, "It takes time. You can't just be a president for a short period of time. You need that time to build those relationships and that trust to do really impactful things. It's not an
Well,
overnight thing."
I mean, that's one of the, I think, kind of really interesting dynamics about, where we're at right now is that the tenure of leaders, especially senior leaders, is getting shorter and shorter.
Right?
People come in and a good tenure is 4 or 5 years now. 22 years is extremely rare. But you're coming in and you do have a mandate. You do have an agenda as a senior leader. There's a lot of pressure to develop those relationships to get those things done. My last institution, I was there for 15 years, and so
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I mean, you develop those relationships kind of organically over time. It can be more challenging when you're coming in brand new and you have a mandate, and it's tough.
That's interesting. So it sounds like you have experience going from faculty to admin. What advice would you have for people specifically in that role or wanting to make that leap into administration?
So I coach a lot of people, both who are newer in their leadership roles and then faculty who are interested in transitioning into those roles. And just being really clear on what your values are, who you want to be as a leader. Most people that I talk to they're interested in the role because they have big ideas on what they want to see their unit do. That's the stuff that gets them excited. But where the rubber meets the road are these kinds of, relationship building and conflict management, these people issues that you and I have been talking about. And that's where your values, I think, are you have to have them figured out. It's tough when you make a decision that, you feel in your bones was the right decision, and you get nothing but negative feedback from it. You have to know that you're doing the right thing, and you have some sort of compass that you're following, especially when you're applying for these roles, really thinking through how you would navigate um, a lot of these issues that we're seeing, not necessarily as specific as like AI or enrollment declines, but how you would navigate two senior faculty members who aren't getting along, or if you're having to choose resources for two competing programs. Those sorts of issues are why it is so important that leadership teams have these conversations about where we're headed as a unit.
Love this. This is so interesting. And thank you so much for sharing this in your newsletter. What's next for you? What does the future hold?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'll tell you, full disclosure, I do not consider myself a writer. I started writing this newsletter, one reason because I didn't see anything like that out there. When I was learning all of this stuff, it was a major gap. I had to really go out of my way to pick up some of these tools. So it's been really fulfilling to share that information. And then the act of writing it down, I think helps me codify a lot of my thoughts. Some of the work that I get the most fulfillment out of right now is coaching leaders, is helping leaders develop their teams. I want to do more of that. I love doing that work. I think it's desperately needed, and I think it has a massive impact on campus.
Agreed. Because you have such a unique perspective working with leaders in the capacity that you do. Where do you see higher ed going given all the current changes? I know. I'm sorry. I just thought of it. We're going deep. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's such a great question.
What does education look like in the future to Kevin
Yeah,
Sanders?
geez. I'll tell you this because I don't know the answer to that question, but I will tell you this: with AI and with it so easy to for people to find content for free online, one of the things that I feel like higher ed and campuses should lean into more are the relationships that they facilitate and the networks that you can walk out of a degree with, these people experiences that you can't get by watching a YouTube video. I think it's going to be a difficult shift because I think for decades we've thought a lot about kind of the proprietary information being the content that's being taught in the classroom. And I think that's becoming less and less kind of the reason why students are there.
Interesting. It's funny because in these conversations that I have with my colleagues, I was just talking to someone yesterday over lunch. Almost seems like the more AI and technology dependent we're becoming, that I'm not psychic, but I'm going to maybe predict that we might actually become anti tech at some point in our classrooms because we're losing the foundations of learning. We because we're continuously augmenting our learning, we're partnering with AI, for example. Someone may not be able to create their own argument. They might not be able to write their own email, like physically in a classroom, kind of banning certain things. Like I just read an article this morning, actually. I think don't shoot the messenger here, but if I have this wrong, in Alberta, in Canada here, some areas have actually banned cell phones for high school students, I think, in their classrooms. And it's been a year now. So I was reading the research or the report for after a year and how the children have changed, how their attitudes, they're more involved with extracurricular activities. There is more attention in class and all of these things. So I'm so curious to see there's just so much happening right now in terms of education, so much opportunity that I see it going the opposite. Like you were saying, it's about the networks, it's about the peopling,
Mhm.
those type of things. And sometimes we can only get to that if we actually reduce our dependency on technology.
I agree. It's interesting. A student musician, when they're studying, they often are sitting in a practice room, by
Mm.
themselves, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, focused, practicing on their instrument. It is. It is.
Y'all have a
Um,
different level of concentration. That is for sure. For
Well, I mean,
sure.
I'll tell you, like, musicians, they go through like Olympic caliber training to do what they do. But it's been interesting, when I was in college, we were just starting to all get cell phones, and I've talked to friends who teach at some of the elite music conservatories in the country, and these are college age students who are really at the top of their game in terms of nationally, and they have told me that they see a real struggle with
Right.
students being able to focus in the practice room. And so I'll share one more thing. Someone a couple months ago was sharing with me their dystopian view of the future of education, and it was interesting. I don't know if I agree with this, but it's still interesting. They were talking about how they think that there's going to be almost like a caste system developed, where people who can afford a face to face, really engaged experience in the classroom are going to have that for the masses, or for people who can't afford it, it's going to be an online AI kind of automated experience.
Interesting. Interesting. I asked something similar in one of my new media classes at some point and got some interesting responses, but never a caste system. Wild. I don't know. It's an interesting time, that's for sure. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, not to completely circle back here, but I mean, I think that's one of the interesting things. You talk to anybody, many of us feel like we are in kind of a generational shift with the direction higher ed's going, and leaders on campus need to be equipped to navigate that change. And it's really hard because it's just extremely disruptive. As you know, we have faculty who are, in their first or second year of teaching, who are much more malleable than the person who has a great lecture, or a great course that they have ironed out all the wrinkles over their 25 years. And I get it. They don't want to change, and I don't blame them.
They're
But
living their best lives. They put up the
yeah,
app. They're just like, it's easy breezy. Yeah, they love it. It's chill, right? Yeah.
right. And so anyway, it's really challenging figuring out where the middle ground is with that, and how we
Yeah.
move the institution forward. And um, it's a lot of the leaders I talk to. I mean, they're burnt out. It's tough work right now.
I can imagine. That's the same with faculty, but then for
Yeah.
leaders leading faculty and all those varied perspectives and ways that they want to handle, yeah, I empathize for sure. Wild. Well, it's quite an interesting perspective and experience that you have, Kevin. Thanks so much for sharing all your tidbits and advice. So, as we start to wind down the conversation, I know I've asked you for quite a few things, but what's one thing that you think new leaders should do when they first start?
Mm.
I mean, we touched on it a bit, but what else can you share with us?
So I was thinking about this leading up to this podcast in terms of new teachers, and what
Oh,
new
yeah,
teachers could
love it.
could do. But I can also share what new leaders. One of the most important things a new leader can do is to find themselves a mentor, or a coach, or a trusted senior faculty member, an inner circle. Sometimes the language you see is your own personal board of advisors. It is such lonely work. Even when you have been on faculty for 20 years, when you move into that position, you are still seeing many of your colleagues oftentimes as friends, but you're also the boss. And so there's an awkward, oftentimes unspoken gap there, or moat. Having people you can lean on, because it's few and far between people who will go out of their way to share with you, this is what you're really knocking out of the park. You'll get a lot of feedback on what you're not doing right. And that's helpful. Don't get me wrong. We're all human. Like, we need both sides. And so having those people who can support you on the hard days and give you constructive advice with love on those days, it's really important to a leader's sustainability.
How about new educator?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and
My
I'll
world.
yeah. So I'll tell you, this is one that I am 100% guilty of. I have seen it a number of times with new faculty over the years, so I know that this is not unique to me. My advice would be to make sure you are teaching the students in front of you. A lot of the times, faculty are hired in from just really, incredible places. It might be teaching a very different population of students. And so sometimes you can have in your mind, I am trying to create this environment or this rigor that I had at my alma mater, which is not tethered to these students, this population, their needs. I have seen faculty struggle when they're focused on this aspirational, because it comes from the best of intentions, but focused on this kind of aspirational goal instead of seeing, what are we dealing with right here in front of us?
That because even within an institution, if you're teaching different years, or like, so this year might be different than next year or prior years, I often hear faculty state that dealing with students coming out of COVID, they are unique compared to pre-COVID. So
Yeah.
we need to change our approaches. That's really cool. I have yet to hear that piece of advice, and that totally makes sense and resonates. And especially for new faculty coming out of industry, they may be used to dealing with, so for my world, business professionals. When you're dealing with a year one business class, and when it's not the same as your home office environment. So it takes some adjusting, right? But interesting. I really appreciate that. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me on this fabulous Saturday morning conversation.
My pleasure. I love talking to you. My son has a soccer game in about an hour, so that's where I'm headed next.
Well, it's perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope your son kicks butt at the soccer game. And it has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you, Sally. You too. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Educator Experience. We hope you're walking away feeling connected, inspired, and just a little bit more supported on your journey. Ready to go a little bit deeper? Join the Educator Experiences community and check out our courses and workshops specifically designed to support new educators as they navigate the ups, downs, and everything in between. You'll find it all at educatorexperiences.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a fellow educator, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, we're building a vibrant community rooted in support and connection. See y'all next Monday.